evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Monday, March 17, 2025, St. Patrick's Day version of the Smithfield School Committee. Before we begin, if everybody please stand and say pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The emergency evacuation and health notification in case of an emergency. There are two main exits out of the media center. They are located to the right and left side of the media center through the set of double doors. Proceed to follow the exit signs to the exit doorways. There are restrooms located outside of the media center through either side of the double doors. There is a public comment sign-up sheet up here in the front at the end of the table. If you are going to talk, speak during the public comment section, please sign up. And whenever anybody talks, please speak at the podium so that you are picked up by the camera, etc. Your voices too. Item number 4, consent agenda items. Approval of minutes, the approval of open minutes from the March 6, 2025 Smithfield School Committee meeting. Approval and sealing of executive session minutes at the February 27, 2025 meeting. Approval of bills, regular bills totaling $169,479.54. Direct checks from March 1, 2025 through March 14, 2025 totaling $131,031.44. Lunch bills totaling $74,456.17. And finally, approval of homeschooling. This will require a motion.
Motion to approve consent agenda items.
And a second.
Second.
Motion has been made and second. Any comments? I just have to warn the superintendent that at the last meeting, Ms. Devine set a record for school committee meetings, 7-minute meeting. Okay? That is probably going to stand forever, you know, with Joe DiMaggio and everything, you know. So just want to let you know that. Okay, this we're all. If there's no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against nay. The ayes have it.
I heard she didn't turn her mic on though.
Okay, we'll give her demerit for that, but still. We don't have any high school student reps tonight, and we're going to move on. 6 and 7, I'm going to flip them if we could. So we're going to take up item 7 first, which is to discuss, review, and approve the overnight high school boys varsity lacrosse trip to Bangor, Maine.
Right, and we have our athletic director, Glenn Castiglione, here to answer any questions. I do want to point out the paperwork came in perfectly on time. This is an overnight trip that is well over the 4-week deadline. Are there any
Questions? If none, this does require a motion
Motion to approve high school boys varsity lacrosse trip to Bangor, Maine.
and a second.
Second.
Motion has been made and second. Any further questions or comments? No. Wish them well. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against nay, the ayes have it. Now we'll move on to item number 6, discuss, review, and approve SLAM architect contracts for a fee not to exceed $205,400. So I guess we'll first do the explanation, and then we'll make our motion to vote on it.
Yes, so we have Patrick Robler, who is our OPM for years, to discuss the process, the negotiations, and then in your packet, you also have a fee not to exceed. Patrick?
Good evening. First, I would like to apologize. My green tie did not arrive in time. So I'm sporting some blue today, but certainly celebrating a holiday that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm here before you today to pursue the approval of the SLAM architectural proposal for 3 facets of the Smithfield Stage 2 emergency projects and 10-year facilities estimates. There is not a lot to update y'all on from the scope side of things, with the exception of the 10-year facilities cost estimate. As part of the negotiation process, SLAM identified several items where we were initially pursuing a 10-year master plan as kind of like a stage 2 light almost, right? A stage 2 addresses the 5-year plan. And so we were also going after years 6 through 10 to get kind of a forecast assessment of additional projects that might need to be considered and talked about during the next 5 years, so that as we then approach the next stage 2, that process becomes easier and is a little bit more forecasted. And SLAM identified that based on the information that we have currently and the information that the school district was looking for, that was a little bit more of an effort than probably what was needed. And so we assessed the current costs that we are looking at, that the school district put together, and we've changed that from a 10-year master plan to a 10-year facilities cost assessment that will basically look at some of the projects that the school district has put together as being needed, largely focusing on the high school, by and large, like 95%, and then a few projects at the middle school. And so that is, I would say, the largest change in scope that we've looked at here, but it should accomplish what we need to accomplish, targeting a $2.5 to $3.5 million budget for years 6 through 10. So the costs associated, you'll see in the proposal, kind of toward the end, of where the fees section is. So first, I'd like to point out the emergency projects. These will be ruled by a contract that will be separate from the other portions that basically deals with the construction side of an architect. So their construction administration and those sorts of things. And that emergency projects number is $70,900. This is 7.09% of essentially $1 million worth of work over 2 fiscal years. That is exactly where we expect an architect's fee to come in at, so we deem that to be appropriate. And for the stage 2 cost assessment, that is $123,000 to complete the stage 2. That is all of the documentation required by RIDE in order to submit any number of projects, whether it's $1,000 worth of projects or $35 million worth of projects. In this case, we are targeting the budget in the RFP, which is currently, I believe it's $4.338 million, largely, again, focusing on the high school. So this comes down to about 2.84% of the total project value of that 5-year plan, and that is comparable to other stage 2s that Collier's Project Leaders has seen and overseen throughout the state of Rhode Island over the years. In addition to that, we have the 10 years facilities cost assessment. And that cost is $11,500, which is 0.33% of the years 6 through 10 target budget of $2.5 to $3.5 million. Again, this is more of an estimate, an architect-led estimate than anything. And so again, this is in line with what we typically see for an estimating portion of a project pursuit. So as far as the total costs go, the total costs amount to a contract value of $205,000, or $205,400. Excuse me. So I'll open it up now for any questions that you might have about the proposal or the scope.
Committee, questions? Yes, Ms. Sauer.
So this may be more for Dr. Bartz or the team collectively. So this money falls outside of the actual emergency money, I assume, and this comes out of our capital improvements funds, or is there a different way of thinking about this?
In terms of this fund, this would come out of your reserve fund. Certainly it could come out of, we can certainly ask the town for our capital reserve funds, where we do have about $700,000.
So we're not making that decision tonight. Tonight we're making the decision to approve
A contract
The
with
contract.
this
Correct.
architect.
And so we can make the decision for which fund that money comes out of at a later date.
I believe so, is that
Also,
correct?
yeah, if I may provide some clarification here. So as part of the RIDE process, both stage 2 and emergency projects, those are total project budget numbers. So specifically speaking to the emergency projects, you're authorized up to $500,000 of RIDE reimbursable funds. They reimburse you at your RIDE reimbursement rate, which for Smithfield I believe is 35%. So for those 2 separate $500,000 projects, 35% of that would come from or would be reimbursed by the state after the completion of the project. That includes your OPM fees and can include your designer fees. So we assist the school districts in towns in pursuing that and claiming that. after the project is done. It is something that you have to ask for, and so we always make sure to go through that process with you. And so that will apply to the stage 2 number, the 123,000. It will also apply to the emergency projects number, the $70,900. So the only thing that wouldn't be reimbursable through RIDE is the $11,500, which is essentially an extra step to forecast for the town of Smithfield and Smithfield Public Schools, what those projects might look like from years 6 through 10.
Okay.
I will warn the committee one thing, that if you do take this out of the money that we're getting from the town, it's that much less money we have on the
Right.
actual project.
Yes.
So the fund balance is one thing we'll be discussing down the road. And you know, we have, what we have right now is tentative. We worked hard to get what we got last year. We had some from prior years. And we don't want that all being eaten up, $200,000 of being eaten up on architect fees. So,
The other thing.
but that discussion's on the road.
Yes. The other thing I will point out too is that the $500,000 limit for the emergency projects is the RIDE reimbursable limit. So let's say that there was $505,000 of work that needed to be done, and some of that included some elected work from the town of Smithfield or Smithfield Public Schools. Then that additional money past $500,000 would be just out of pocket. Right, so it's not, we're not limited in scope to $500,000, but it's just the reimbursement limit for RIDE for emergency projects.
I have one question, if you back up to the emergency project, what was the estimate, and that, was it $1 million, did you say?
So the emergency projects are two $500,000 projects. And so for the emergency projects number for SLAM, that $70,900 applies to both in total.
Okay, so, and the 5 is obviously the top reimbursable.
Exactly.
It's not saying that's an estimate of what the work will be.
Correct.
Correct, okay. That's what I thought I heard, but I want to make sure. Other questions?
Once SLAM is onboarded, then we will do the estimate process.
Correct.
And from a payment perspective, I know we're not there yet, but this would be broken down to hit different fiscal years, correct? The 6 to 10 year facilities plan, I assume, would not be incurred this year.
This year, that's correct.
Yes, so basically as far as low-hanging fruit goes, the emergency projects are of utmost importance. In trying to get both of those completed, it will be a challenge, but we are up for it, and SLAM is on board for taking on that challenge as well. For the stage 2, that is a September 15th deadline. So we just have to have the stage 2 done by then. As far as the 10-year capital plan, or the 10-year facilities assessment goes, it is really, facilities estimate, it is really just up to the school district on when we want SLAM to engage in that process. So we can hit either fiscal year.
And just to go back to the emergency projects, so we have, as you know, a very rigorous schedule. If we're able to meet it, one of the projects would come out of this year's budget, the second would be out of the next fiscal year, would be after July 1.
Okay. Are we at a point where we're concerned about potentially not making that progress? Has anything changed with dates that we should be aware of that have tightened anything?
So for the first emergency project for the 25 fiscal year, that project, whichever one we decide to go with, which low-hanging fruit looks like would be the CTE space, that would be the easiest in scope to tackle as far as duration goes. That project would have to be substantially complete for construction by June 30th of this year. So in trying to hit that date, what we need to largely marry up is the various approvals that need to be done. So once the architect is onboarded, which we hope by the end of tomorrow after the town council meeting will be complete, the contract will be signed and they will immediately launch into the design process. After they have developed the drawings to a point where we can bid out the job, then we'll have to go back for approval to bid out the job. And then once we have bidders selected and compiled, then we will have to go for approval just like we did with SLAM for that cost and to enter into a contract. And so part of the struggle there is just in marrying up the meetings, right? So that we want to come before the school board first, and then we want to go to town council. And so depending on how that goes, it could impact that schedule. Our goal is to try to provide as much information as soon as possible to allow for any adaptations that might be required.
And what, in your opinion, I know you can't put an exact description on this just yet, but would be substantially complete? Because at this point, everything you just mentioned seems feasible by that date, but then
Sure.
that's not actual work, and I assume that it would not qualify for substantial complete.
Correct. So we don't just have to have the paperwork done, we have to have the work complete. So let's talk, for example, the CTE space. The flooring needs to be abated, and then currently the scope is to chisel down that floor to slope appropriately to drains that need to be then installed. We're also then going to put in a hand washing sink. So as far as scope goes for construction projects, minimal work. But we have from the time that school lets out until June 30th to be substantially complete. And substantial completion is defined as the ability for the space to be occupied. So that means that we have met fire code, we've met life safety code, and that there is not ongoing construction that is so robust that it would prohibit the space from being used for its intended purpose.
Has any thought been given to working after school prior to let out of school?
So the struggle with that is that it is the flooring for the space, which would mean that as soon as we start abating that area would have to be sealed off, and then we wouldn't be able to go in and out. And so unless there was some kind of an election to relocate classroom space toward the end of the school year, then I don't really see how that would be possible. However, we are speaking with RIDE right now about some other options that we're pursuing after the result of a walkthrough, and that might actually minimize the scope to less than we initially thought it was. So that is
The scope of the actual work being done?
that is an unknown at this point, but if that happens, then it would greatly shorten our duration.
So we had a meeting in the culinary room with the representative from RIDE, the same when we met. They gave us the initial items, the slope floor. We know that it has to be abated, and the hand washing sink. So before we engaged any further, we wanted to just doubly make sure that was exactly what was needed. So that was ascertained. It was discussed, and we will hear this from the Department of Health, that we may not have to do as extensive work to have that space qualify as CTE, which would be faster. Certainly, what we're looking for, safety, just making sure going ahead that we're able to abate, slope the floor, and the hand washing sink, and upgrade the current dishwasher as well, which should be
Yeah,
able
so
to be
what would
done
the not as extensive part be
if we didn't have to slope the floor.
for drainage?
There is the possibility that because the space is not being used as a commercial kitchen or any sort of production kitchen for like large-scale consumption, that it might not need to meet the same standard in regards to floor sloping, because they wouldn't be sloshing water onto the floor and squeegeing it around like they're required to do in commercial kitchens. So in that case, because currently that space is maintained by the school janitorial staff, that might allow us to avoid having to slope the floor, which is a lot of work. And so if we're able to abate, retile, and then install the hand washing sink, again, that would really decrease our duration. However, it is also something to consider, and we'll be looking at through this process, to figure out, hey, if we can fit all of it in, and we want to do that because eventually maybe the CTE program has aspirations to do other things that might require that sloped floor, then that will be part of the conversation. But the goal right now of this project is to meet the minimum standards for RIDE so that the CTE program can launch in the fall of 2005.
Yeah, I would be much more in favor of temporarily relocating the classroom. I think we could come up with some crafty things to do towards the end of the year in another space than to not do the fullest potential of the room while we have the floor up at that point.
Definitely on the same page with you. So the high school principal and the culinary teacher are looking at alternative spaces. We'll be working together, should we be able to move forward before the end of the year, how to seal off that space and to relocate it. So the sooner, certainly we get the permissions, we have a contractor or board, we will look at what are some options for the school committee to consider for us to be able to start and finish this work. So it will be tight. The high school faculty has been apprised that at the very least, the last day of school, everyone does need to exit the building. The building will be closed this summer for at least one, if not two projects.
And the decision on that floor and what degree we need to make, do we have a time frame? And they're not gonna tell us on June 28th, are they?
No, I would anticipate, so that's gonna be an unofficial conversation that the right individual is gonna have with their contact at the Department of Health. And we should have an indicator as to whether that is possible or not. I would hope by the end of the week. So,
By the end, I'm sorry?
I would hope by the end of the week.
Okay, good.
So that information would be forthcoming based on our conversation.
Okay, and then, obviously, we spent the time on the CT, then the process would be able to start immediately, I guess, for the special ed room, which would be fixed or be worked on in the next fiscal year. So
That's
now-
correct.
Now you're not overlapping your potential $500,000.
Exactly, after July 1st.
All right, and just one thing, tell me if in a layman's term I'm getting this right. That is, at a normal stage 2, you don't have architect drawings coming out to the extent that we are gonna have under emergency work.
Correct,
Right.
yes.
The emergency work kind of melds 2 and 3 together so
Yes.
that we are ready, when it's done, to do the bidding process, hire a contractor and start,
Exactly. The emergency project process basically skips stage 1 and stage 2. It's why that has been developed, is to basically jump over the whole proving the need, because it's an emergency, so there is a need. And so, as part of the stage 3 process, or as part of the emergency project process, we kind of hit 1 or 2 points that are usually picked up in stage 1 and stage 2 to prove the need, and then we immediately jump to CDs, or construction documents. And so it's a 1-stage approval for RIDE, so we don't have to go back 3 times, which is typical for a stage 2, stage 3 process. And so it's just 1-stage approval, 1 and done with RIDE, and then we're off to the races.
okay, and I'm kind of back to the building question, since we'll be working on the CT in this fiscal year, I assume the architect fees will be payable then. They'll be working on the other one in the next fiscal year, I assume those architect fees. And then the phase 2 will be as that proceeds, and obviously you said the last part, the year 6 through 10 is out there, so those, back to the spreading out of this, the payments will not all be.
Correct. So we will also, through this process, make sure that the billing is coincided with each project. So for one emergency project, SLAM's billings will be separated out from the second emergency project, so that those are applicable in each fiscal year and reimbursable as.
Further question?
Yeah, I
Yes.
have a question. Why did we decide to do the culinary room before that?
It'll be
It's
faster.
It's
So we could do that in potentially 2
And how
weeks.
long so the culinary could be done in 2 weeks, how long
So-
is the other?
So the other project is just more involved when it comes to the quantity of work that needs to be accomplished. So the building of walls, the relocating, or building of walls around IT spaces, putting in some HVAC units to cool those IT spaces, installing a bathroom, there's plumbing inspections that go on, it's more involved versus a sink and a floor. Which it's not that simple, but it is far simpler than tackling the special education relocation project.
Okay, and when would be completion of that room, would we think?
So the special education project we would be targeting before school is back in session, with the understanding that if we hit something with a schedule very early on in this process and we go, ooh, there's a problem because of X, like an existing condition, then we would come to the school building committee and say, here's what we're dealing with, this is what our plan is, and then there would be input from the school.
So that'd be this September 2025?
Both projects are
Okay.
targeted to be.
I thought you were saying next fiscal.
Yeah.
Well, it would be in the next fiscal year, but this
Oh,
September
okay.
is part of the next fiscal year.
And then, just a comment on the commercial kitchen too, because you said if it wasn't a commercial kitchen, I think if we're gonna do it, we don't kind of cut corners on it, that we waited a long time for this, and looking at a commercial option for Smithfield would be great, because it's in every student could get involved in a commercial option for a culinary program. And while I don't see that in a lot of other districts, I think that's something Smithfield can offer all abilities. So it'd be important to keep that slope, even if it takes longer, I think.
So if I may speak to that
Yeah.
concern. So the emergency projects are kind of an entirely separate thing from the stage 2, but as part of the stage 2 project list that we've developed, we've identified the renovation of the high school culinary room and small theater room, to the tune of about $650,000. That would be part of the stage 2, and this would assess those additional kind of upgrade needs, right? What do we want to do to make the space that Smithfield is hoping it to be? And that would allow for things like millwork changes, or plumbing changes, or additional equipment, those sorts of things that would potentially enable the CTE program to do more than it is initially able to do right off the bat. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
And the other thing, a question of the committee is that if there is the ability to get what we need done and then to do more later, the reality of money is going to hit us at some point, and the building committee will have to make decisions when we get quotes in. I mean, we also what happened with the boiler project, okay? It's a perfect example. But decisions may have to be made as to what we can do. I mean, I agree in principle, yes, I would love this to go all the way for, to give us more flexibility for a program down the road, but money sometimes is a barrier worse than plumbing in a building.
Right, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, by all means.
I just wanted to update the committee on the legal end. My office received a contract at 4 p.m. today. We're just ironing out some few details relative to just some boilerplate language and going back and forth. So in your motion tonight, if you are going to approve, just ask for subject to final legal approval. So, and then we do anticipate having that completed tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning, overnight. Subject to.
There were not that many
legal
changes.
approval. This is fast track, huh? Okay, so if there's no further questions, we will need a motion, and you just heard what needs to go into the motion.
Motion to approve Slam Architect contract for a fee not to exceed $205,400, subject to final legal modifications to be completed tomorrow.
I'll need a second.
Second.
Okay. Motion is made second. Any further questions, comment, or anything? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against nay, the ayes have it. The project has begun. There we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tomorrow night's is the council, right?
Tomorrow night, yes, we'll be at the town council,
Yeah,
explaining the
okay,
same.
very good. Let's see, we did, item 8, communications, a copy of resignations, retirements, new hires in the district, and a copy of the February budget transfer. 9 is superintendent's report, and we had a little mix-up in terms of the advertising of the oil project. So the superintendent's going to speak a little bit about the oil project in her report.
Exactly, and just.
And it will, but just 1 second, we will have the oil project on here again so that we can get any and all questions until this thing is nailed down. But we had a couple of things that have to be straightened out before everybody heads for the hills.
Absolutely, and before I have Angela tell us a little bit about what has actually occurred and been delivered, just want to do a shout out to the students who were in Mamma Mia on stage, working on the crew, our director Carissa Roderick, music teacher Dan Caramenti, and all of our parents and other staff members that really made it. It was a rousing success, and I believe the attendance was the highest that they've ever had for a play. And just watching it, it was joyful. So many kids on the stage. It was fantastic. The Boyle Project. Angela, do you mind?
Good evening. Just an update. So this weekend they started to finish painting the interior floor on the construction stand area. I believe Glenn is gone, so on Friday, we had most of the mat, if not all of the mats, delivered for track and field, which are stored properly. All the hurdles are in place and stored properly. So we're looking to hopefully start, actually they started this week, and we're gonna get going in April. By April, we should be installing pavers in the entryway plaza. That is on track to go forward. And at our April 3rd meeting, we'll have when Ms. Devine is back and the OPM is back, we'll have a update for the financial standings of where we stand to date.
one of the things that's important that we get figured out here, we've asked a couple of times in the recent past for a listing of the cost of the work, what was done, the cost of work in the concession stand. These are specifically the concession stand. And also, way back when, I asked for a listing of what has been taken out of our original proposals, going back to when they first bid it, and the bid came in around $2 million. Went back to the drawing board, rebid it. What was taken out between process 1 and process 2 to make it go from 2 to 1? And then I believe after that 1, they even negotiated whatever. So what was taken out to get to the final? That's all we're looking for. I know this community, 5 years from now, somebody will say, hey, you know, there's supposed to be such and such in that thing. And they'll blame the school committee. It's not the school committee's problem, so we need to at least have that information.
And that information will come forward at our April 3rd meeting.
Thank you.
They've agreed to have it at the April 3rd meeting?
Yes.
Okay. One other question, the pavers, what is the second location where, because if I understand correctly, there's no large pavers that will go in the flagpole area, that would just be the smaller. Where are the large pavers being installed?
That's a very good question. So, Dr. Box and I have visited several areas within the walkways that are currently asphalt paved. So if you're outside the concession stand, if you look forward, the asphalt paved portion where the concrete ends would be a good place to start. The thought process for it would be, we could remove asphalt as part of the amount that we have sold, and also use the pavers that we remove from the entryway and install them in the smaller ones to fill the void so that we could keep going, and as more larger pavers are sold, because 2 equal 1, we could just keep filling.
To create a pattern with the smaller
Correct.
and the
Try to make a pattern, and so that we don't have to keep saw cutting, but in all honesty, we have not cut anything or opened anything up as of yet. That was just a draft thought of where to be most visible and where people would see it.
Okay, great, thank you.
We all set?
Thank you, that's
Further? And Superintendent, you're all set, right?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, very good. Public forum? No public forum, okay. Consider items to add for future agendas, if anybody has them. I do have a couple things just to let you know. We will be talking at our next meeting regarding a special ed workshop. The department's been getting some information together, and we'll probably be looking at having a date or setting a date or something into the springtime here sometime. The remote learning discussion, we may have at that meeting, or we may have at the second meeting. I think it's going to depend on if Dr. Monaco can attend or not. If she can, it'll be sooner. If not, it'll be later. So, on that one. So, other questions or other items?
In regards to the virtual learning, could we be prepared when we do discuss that, whether it's at that meeting or the next, with the surrounding communities and a little bit further out throughout the state on how others are also using their virtual plans? I know some have gone back to traditional snow days, others stay with virtual. If we can just have some of that information
We
available.
can definitely give you the data, who's using what, and then even targeting that one date that we've used this year.
Great, thank you.
One thing I would,
Yes.
I keep getting questions on different breakdowns among different sports in district. So I know we had a brief presentation maybe a year or two ago, but I would like to see, and I think some of the town would like to see, how money's divided based on sport.
Okay, so when breakdown, you mean financial breakdown?
Yes, like a
Yeah.
financial breakdown and discussion of football compared to lacrosse compared to.
Okay, intra-sport, not sports compared to science fair.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, inter-sports and how, like the financial breakdown separated by sport.
And is this coaches, or is it the entire budget? Or
The budget.
So in other words, if the hockey team costs X number of dollars and the
Yes,
boys cross-country team
Yes.
costs Y,
Yep,
that's what you're looking for.
exactly.
All right, just want to make sure. Okay,
So we can do that and also explain the rotation of when new uniforms,
Yeah,
equipment
that would
comes
be
in.
good. Exactly.
Okay, if that's in our public forum, I mean, on a future agenda, my notes in the wrong place. We'll go to item 12, consider and vote on motion to convene executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A, matters pertaining to personnel, discussion of contract and evaluation of superintendent in accordance with the Open Meeting Act, Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A1. Legal advice regarding employment contract in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A2. Discussion regarding the matter of security, Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A3, school security. And review of executive session minutes in the March 6, 2025 meeting. This requires an individual vote, so we need a motion first
Motion to move to executive session?
and a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Ms. Fowler?
Aye.
Ms. Sauer?
Aye.
Ms. Hogan?
Aye.
Mr. Levite? Aye. Myself, aye. Very good.
Richard, the culinary room is open.